I'm Jim Czek.
I'm Renee Merrifield.
We're here with the On the Ballot, and we're going to kick it off here first with BC. And we're going to go on the BC budget. To me, it looked like they ran out of ideas. We've been talking about that for a while. And they raided the tax cupboard for scraps. They just anything they could figure out a tax. Like you said before on the show, how many taxes have they introduced since the NDP took over for the BC Liberals?
Yeah, 33 new taxes. And Brenda Bailey was big on we're not going to introduce new taxes. This budget's not going to have any. And so what they did is they really increased the breadth of the tax. Anything that they could, they just scoped up, scoped wider, or charged more. This is a huge issue for BC, who are already, bleeding a death of a thousand cuts. And I think that this was just a huge blunder. I mean, there's also all sorts of speculation, and I won't get into all of the different hearsay and innuendo, but some actually believed that EB was going to try and call an election, and that this would be the budget that makes them fall, and that's why they just were lackluster when they put all of the effort that they did, or the lack of effort, into this budget. I think this signals a really unserious government right now, and one that has run out of ideas, and one that is continuing to tax its citizens beyond what is actually plausible.
Yeah, the one that David Eby went on to did a little bit of a Q&A there at the Vancouver Board of Trade, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, and he was asked the question on the PST, increasing the scope of the PSTs. PST is now going to apply to accounting fees, architectural fees, and a few other places like that. Just like she asked the question is like, this is likely going to drive more businesses to Alberta so they can bill out of Alberta. And he basically said, well, I mean, if that's the reason you're going to go to BC, Alberta, Alberta is worse than us and there's a country. I mean, he tried to do his virtue signaling and all that again.
Yeah, and it was even worse than that because, Bridget actually drew attention to a story that she had had where she met with the business owner, and the business owner said, "That's it, that's enough. I'm heading out. I'm going to take me and my business with me to Alberta." This is scary. EB needs to pay attention, and for EB to be so, almost lackadaisical or half-hearted about taking this seriously, I think is a really big mistake. I think there are a lot of businesses that are teetering, a lot of businesses that have been waiting, a lot of businesses that have a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and now with these higher than high taxes, I think that there are going to be a lot of businesses that just don't have that extra 7% to give. So I think this is a scary time for us. I think this, and even the BC budget anticipates $500 million from that one tax line item. That's a lot of money to be taking from its citizens in addition to what they already are taking.
Yeah, no, it's actually crazy because if you think about it, that in accounting fees for a small business, like lots of people have a tax bill that's around, like accounting fees are around 10 grand, so that's another $700. And then you think about even people getting their tax returns prepared, that's going to cost them more because it's just going to be more and more and more and more taxes. And I can't remember the number. Wasn't like 30 taxes that have been created by the NDP since they've taken over?
33.
33 taxes. And then and once you open up the scope, obviously, it's just like I said, raiding the tax cupboard. Like, I think they were trying to kind of like not introduce more taxes, but then they just broaden the scope of the taxes and then bring down the tax bracket. You know what I mean? Just like, it's kind of like tricksters, like tricky or whatever, right? Like, well, you're still challenging for taxes.
They were trying to get money from anywhere that they could. So without, really introducing a new tax, they increased the scope of the PST. They increased the amount of interest that seniors are being charged. They decreased or increase the amount that the lowest tax threshold is actually paying. They took it from everywhere. And, you gave the example of an accounting fee. Let's talk about architectural fees. You talk about housing and, a multifamily building will probably have, an architectural fee over $1 million to $2 million. That's a lot of money. All of the consulting fees, that's even more money. And so you're taking it from housing, which, already is overinflated and too expensive and no longer makes sense to build. So you've got housing starts going down and you're going to further tax them It makes zero sense. And you saw both the CHBA and UDI come out in full force saying enough is enough, this doesn't work. But today you actually saw, I think it was 17 different business organizations write the letter that said this PST is going to be the undoing of businesses.
And also they got a D, and Eby said he's okay with a D because he's hoping that Alberta gets a worse grade. I'm just like, so you're the dumbest kid in class, and you're just hoping somebody's dumber than you. Is that the strategy?
Yeah, and Jim, this really affects the citizens in a number of ways. Number one, we pay more tax, and already we are one of the most taxed provinces in Canada. Number two, our credit rating is going to go down. Running a deficit this high, we're looking at a tremendous downgrade. That means we're going to pay more interest, and interest costs are already the third largest. If it was a ministry in and of itself, it would be the third largest of all of our ministries, second, third only to health and education. That is scary times for BCers.
And Brenda Bailey promised, like couple weeks leading up to this, that this was going to be an austerity budget, that people are going to be mad at her. And then she kind of let something out that slipped out when she was at that Greater Vancouver Board of Trade too. She let out that she spent a lot of time in her caucus there defending that we have to make money first before we can tax something. And I think she maybe have been trying to do some austerity, but just couldn't get it past the rest of them. I mean, that's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, austerity or trying to incent business. So it might have been that she was actually saying, like, hey, look, we've got to actually get our businesses back on their feet. We've got to get our economy firing on all cylinders. And instead of that, we've got something that's going to have businesses leaving and businesses bleeding out. And that coupled with, the state of Indigenous reconciliation right now, and with the Cowichan and Gagatla decision, we are really, really dealing with a lot of businesses that are going to be leaving BC.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be hard pressed to say why. I mean, David Eby, again, his response was like, I just wait to see how bad Alberta is. I mean, Alberta's been kind of like the crown jewel for adding jobs and all kinds of things. And, like they're pushing forward with energy and the AI data centers and all that stuff. And whereas in BC, we're saying we won't even give energy to fintech. So we're rationing energy here in BC. And while Alberta is like, trying to tap as much energy as it can, it seems to be a tale of two provinces too.
Yeah, and even though the two provinces may have deficits, one province is actually incenting business and spending money to really get things moving forward, like their healthcare system, and the other province is actually doing the opposite. You look at the GDP of Alberta, and they're number one right now in Canada. That's very positive, and they're neck and neck with Saskatchewan. So whether or not they run a deficit, they're running a deficit for the right reasons. We are not running a deficit for the right reasons. We are all turned around in our priorities right now. And my hope was that Brenda Bailey would have actually tried to right the ship. This is not that signal. I have watched her in a couple of different meetings with businesses, try and defend this budget. But it's lackluster, and both. I think most of the NDP are looking rather defeated before they even start into the earnest debate in the Legislative Assembly there, where they're going to get just hammered.
And one thing that Alberta has that BC doesn't have is their own sovereign wealth fund, or whatever you want to call it, their rainy day fund. They have a massive rainy day fund, and you hit it right on the nail when you said the problem with BC is that as we increase the debt, we've already had a couple credit downgrades. If we get another credit downgrade, that means our interest costs go higher, and on higher costs on already inflating debt means, that debt could become the number one thing that we have to service here in British Columbia. And it doesn't take long once you start thinking of that as a homeowner or as a family. If you rack up your credit cards at 28.8, all of a sudden that credit card may be the be all end all for you.
Exactly. And furthermore, what's happening is that this government, because they can't afford to borrow any more money, because they know that their interest costs are going to go up, they're not spending on the infrastructure that is needed. They're blaming it on everyone else. It's even, I mean, that's the scariest part about this, is that they are not taking zero responsibility for the state of where we are and the speed at which we have gotten here. Like Horgan posts this, $5.5 billion surplus. Eby squanders it with extra spending right when he gets into the house. And then, for the next, 2.5, almost 3 years now, has spent us into oblivion. Scary times for BC.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more fallout from this budget. I think the businesses, like you say, there's a lot of agent or organizations now coming out against this, and I think it just gets tougher and tougher to do business in British Columbia. And like if people leave and start leaving, that means there's less people to tax. So that means the people that are left have to be taxed even more. So the more people that
And
leave, the more you have to tax the people that are still here.
there are people leaving. I mean, the Premier Smith is complaining that there's so many people coming to Alberta. EB has the opposite problem. EB has a deficit, with more people leaving than coming. That hasn't happened in 3 decades. And the last time it happened was when the NDP were in charge in the 90s. So we're looking at less people, and the people that are leaving are the creative capital. They're the workforce. They're the ones that are still want jobs and still want to pay taxes. So we have we might keep the retirees that aren't paying taxes anymore, but we're losing the creative capital that we should have.
And more news out of Tumbler Ridge there. The brother of the shooter there has been arrested, and that's according to the RCMP, and that's Jacob Van Rootselaar, wanted on a Canadian-wide attempted murder warrant, and that the older brother has been arrested, and he's 22 years old, wanted in connection with an incident allegedly involving an edged weapon in 2024 in Fort Mac, and he was arrested just the other day. And even more bad news, I guess, David Eby looking for a scapegoat on there. He doesn't want to face up to a lot of his stuff, the decriminalization and the failures of the RCMP and the social services and that. And he's now looking at OpenAI because he says that OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, could have prevented the Tumbler Ridge massacre, adding that he's angry about that. The BC Premier's remarks come after it was revealed by journalists in the United States that a ChatGPT account belonging to the alleged murderer, Jesse, had been banned by OpenAI, but the company chose not to inform the RCMP. And federal AI minister Edwin Solomon there said on Monday he'd summoned representatives from the firm. I mean, it was a closed out account, and David Eby loves to look for a fall guy in almost everything he does.
Yeah, there's that aspect. This is a little bit tricky because there is the assumption of privacy, and for many years, the CIA wanted data from different entities, whether that was Meta or whether that was Google, and they've been preventing that type of access. We look at China and we say, China should not own all of the data of its citizens. So on the one hand, we want privacy. On the other hand, we want them to turn, in people that they see things going on. I mean, this is a really difficult one. And I think that you are right. I think Eby's looking for a scapegoat because I think what the deeper issue for me is, where are the supports for and mental health supports for, our youth? Where are the family supports for, parents who see their kids going in the wrong direction? What have we done in our schools to really give that support when our teachers see, something going wrong? I mean, we've literally cut off so many different aspects, and instead given safe supply and decriminalization as a pacifier, as it were.
Yeah, it seems like some of the information out there that this person was on like a cocktail of drugs, and where's that, like the decriminalization and all these other drugs that were being administered or prescriptions, and then all the police calls to that location. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of that needs to be dug into. David Eby should call himself and his policies into account as well when they're summoning people there to.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a big proponent of involuntary care. And this individual was on a psychiatric hold at some point, and was released. because they didn't have the right accommodations or any sort of residential care. We need to really rethink as a society how we care for those that are struggling with mental illness, and not just mental illness, but those that, have a psychiatric break, etc., and how we protect the rest of society when those individuals need that care. And EB came out in the last election and was really big and loud about involuntary care, but so far has not really backed up what his election promise was. But then again, nor did he come out with the $1,000. In fact, he's gone and done a complete about face on the $1,000 he was going to gift to everyone.
He's actually reached into your pocket and taken more out as opposed to giving
At
out.
least 1,000.
Eleanor Sturko put this piece out. She's a conservative MLA, 152 public relations staff, and she's saying BC want real doctors, not spin doctors. And we see this in both federal, provincial, even municipal politics, and even interior health. The amount of people they put in their PR departments is just crazy. And yet, as media, we reach out. We rarely get an answer. It seems like everything is being marketed as opposed to just truth.
Yeah, and I mean, communications and PR staff has really gone through the roof. I mean, Eleanor put this out. This is a piece that was done by Jordan Armstrong, and in that piece, there's actually a really good interview with her and with Trevor Halford. They are complaining about how many of these staff are still on the payroll, and yet we are cutting from other areas. And again, it's because these staff, and Jordan Armstrong points this out in this actual news piece, that these staff are the ones that help politicians win again, and so they're very difficult to cut and they're very difficult to get rid of. Having said that, EB and and it really started, even in the BC Liberals day, but we have seen an incredible increase in the number of these staff members that are running full time, and it is a little bit about spin doctors, those that are out there and spinning stories and controlling the media.
And the sad thing is, many of these spin doctors actually came from the media after media was gutted. And, you look at the Online News Act and all these other schemes that have happened. Many of the media ended up working for the government. And then it's almost impossible sometimes to get access to the people in power, NDP and the Liberals, they're the ones in power. And for us to get access is sometimes like pulling teeth. And yet they have all this push out information. They just push out information, but they never want to seem to respond to requests.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? They're pushing out the information, they're pushing out the story they want you to hear, but they're not actually available for that interaction or transparency. That's what the media should be doing. But as you say, we have absolutely gutted it and rendered it useless by paying for it.
You know what they should do, and I mentioned this to an MP, is they should actually, in the United States, they have Caroline Levitt that stands and does a press briefing every day. So if you got all these people, then put one at the podium every day and leave her there for an hour and a half, or him or her, leave them there for an hour and a half a day to answer every question that any reporter, not selected reporters, any journalist that wants to show up and ask a question, leave them there to answer those questions. Why don't they do that?
Yeah, and in fact, in the U.S., they actually opened the press gallery to independents
Yep.
and anyone who is a legitimate journalist, which I thought was very commendable and very wise on the part of the president. I mean, as you and I have spoken before, no one has given more access than this current president. From whether it's his press secretary or whether it's himself, he gives tremendous amounts of access and does so at sometimes the expense of the mainstream media.
Yeah. And then who was the ones that were whining when he opened it up to independent journalists and different new types of journalists? It was the mainstream media, the entitled few, that were whining that all of a sudden other people got to go in there. But I mean, that room is huge. I mean, they have a couple hundred journalists in there. In Canada, there's just the really select few. We did an interview in our really big show today. We had Chris Sims on from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and she was a longtime journalist there on the Hill, actually, and talking about how it's just this tight club and how the club doesn't let anybody in.
It's very true, and it needs to change. desperately. I think that we need a different transparency. We need different media. It's definitely not a winning strategy for any politician to run on, because you'll go up against the CBC. I think that was a difficulty, and in the last election, even federally, because they'll just skewer you. And I watch. The panelists, and I'm like, wow, I have never seen them so obsessed with negative spin on an opposition leader as they are on Pierre Polyev. And so, in the back of my head, I'm like, either they are very, afraid of him, or just out to get him. But man, oh man, it almost gets to the point where it's annoying. Like, come on, I just want some good journalism, and please, can we find some balance? Surely within four, panelists, you can find at least one that would have some semblance of balance.
No, that would mean you'd have to have four. You'd have to have two if you wanted balance, and you'd have to have two that are actually legitimate. And Chris Sims said I should go on that panel, and I agree. And I won't take the $300 that they offer for you. I'll do it for nothing. But I did talk to, and Chris brought it up, and I did bring it up with an MP as well. I think it's more than just bias. I think the Liberals actually use the media as a shield as well. They literally use it as a shield, because they're not asking the questions on the conflicts of interest, the freedom. There's tons. Freedom Convoy. We could go on and on. We could sit here probably for half an hour, not run out of things that need to be answered to. They don't ask the questions, but they also block access from us from asking the questions. Like, we send email after email, ask for interviews. We get nothing, no responses. So they're a shield to keep independent media out, because they say, well, there's the parliamentary gallery that gets to ask questions, but they're not asking the questions. They ride on the plane. They're not asking questions. Case in point, Matt Jeaneroux is now going on the flight with Mark Carney to India, Australia, and Japan. We learned that yesterday.
And this does not make any sense to me. Honestly, he is a backbencher who has not been in Parliament for the last 7 months, while he, or I shouldn't say seven, sorry, 5 months since he declared that he was going to resign. And, he crosses the floor and goes on a trip. Like, this makes no sense. What value would he have in going? Uh, it's beyond me, and there's all sorts of speculation that I start going to in terms of uh you know um yeah, allegiances beyond maybe, but this one's a head scratcher.
Well, if we look at the pattern, though, Michael Maw crosses over. He goes to China. Seems odd.
Michael Michael Mago makes a little bit more sense. He is Chinese speaking, so that does make a little bit of sense as well. I mean, Sam Cooper, he covered Ma in the election, and some of the difficulties and shenanigans in that particular riding. So, that one is like, is he going to repay the favor to someone in China? Maybe. Is he going to show allegiance to China? Maybe. I hate that I even think that way. But definitely, at least he speaks the language. So at a real basic level, I could say that he speaks the language, and that's why the prime minister wanted him along.
30,000 votes is what Matt Jeaneroux, in a conservative stronghold in Edmonton Riverbend, he decided to silence with a meeting with Mark Carney, with giving them, instead of calling a by-election. And go ahead.
And it's a riding that has always, like, since the beginning, has been conservative.
And also in a conservative province. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's a conservative stronghold. It's like they reached in there and just ripped the heart out of the conservative there. And also then the CBC and that Rosemary Barton and them are doing things like, oh, well, it looks like a lot of conservatives now are really leaning towards the Liberals. I mean, they really run cover. And then Rosemary Barton got caught on a hot mic saying, oh, it's all made up anyway. And then she started laughing. And you really have to question where we're going with this. And I don't know if you remember that where that Mudd comes from, Dr. Samuel Mudd, the doctor that worked on John Wilkes Booth that shot Abraham Lincoln there, and his name was Mudd. And then there's a lot of stuff on when somebody's name turns to Mudd. And And then there was that Casey at the Bat Mud. I mean, Matt Mud Jeaneroo. Like, I mean, it's going to be tough for him to shake that mud off of what he's done in that riding. 30,000 votes. Like, he should own up to it and face the electorate and show then that give the electorate a chance. Because otherwise, what does a vote mean in Canada?
I wanna believe that it will. I want to believe that it's gonna have that effect. My concern right now is what the Canadian people are watching and what they are listening to. My concern is that there seems to be a lack of understanding as to how bad our economy actually is and how bad it is continuing to be. I am very concerned that we see the US as such an enemy and not necessarily with the right lens. Now, I'm not saying that Trump is amazing and doing all the right things. No, he's not. He's very difficult. But you listen to Marco Rubio's speech. That's eloquent. That's said in a way and in a language that a Canadian can understand. And yet, we would rather take the whatever we're fed by CBC than actually start thinking, wait a second, things are not great. Wait a second, we were supposed to start these big projects, but they haven't started. Wait a second, I don't have more money at the end of the month. Wait a second, my taxes are up. Wait a second, we see more money going out of the country. And I just don't hear those really salient conversations right now. And I'm hoping that they'll change now that we have the opposition in the House again.
Well, I'm going to say I think people need to stop watching the CBC and CTV and Global, and they need to watch outlets like ourselves and Sam Cooper's and different things, because you're not getting the truth anymore there. You're literally getting fed a narrative. You're getting fed stuff that you can't believe. So they have their echo chamber. And that's the problem with it. That's the real problem, is the Liberals watch that, and it's their own echo chamber. So they think they're doing okay because they're not getting any feedback. There is no feedback for them. They believe what they're saying because they stand up there and tell you how great Canada is. And then the CBC repeats it, and they just, that's all they hear, because they're not, I'm sure they're not watching us, but it's that feedback loop. But I think a lot of Canadians have given up on the CBC and CTV. I mean, there are people in the comments right now saying they won't watch CBC or CTV for that reason.
Yeah, and I mean, like honestly, if you watch Economist today, if you think back to how many quarters we have been in negative GDP, territory versus positive, I think it's 8 out of 12. Like, this is not good news, and I have not seen anything from Carney that would give me pause or would have us shift otherwise. You know, so I'm sitting here going, where are people listening? What are they hearing? How are they getting their news? And yes, get it from independents like this, but also, we need to start doing a better job of educating ourselves in terms of why things are the way they are, and what can be done to change them. Going and saying that we are going to wholeheartedly, or in one fell swoop, switch to Chinese and Indian trade is the most ridiculous thing ever. And I don't know if you saw that poll that actually showed, Canadians are the only one out of Canada, the UK, and France and Australia that believe that the US is a worse trading partner than is Russia or China. That's scary to me. That's like, what is going on in Canada that would have us so blind to that same reality?
You can't believe a lot of that. We did a piece on the show this morning where it says, the United States is not your enemy. The United States is not your enemy. And if you believe that, you might be stupid, because we rest comfortably every night under the protection of the largest economy and the largest military in the world. And we've done this forever. We're so lucky. If you look at a globe, if you're watching, if you look at a globe and you look who we're next to, it's a benefit to us. We're next to the world's largest economy. We're next to the world's largest military, and they protect us. And we've been sold this idea because politicians love power. And we're going to show you this in a second here. But look at this. I want you to burn this one into your retina here. This is a 2014 story from Global.
Yeah, but that was in the Harper era.
Yeah, and then a comet, Ian and I talk about it all the time, a comet must have hit just Canada, and we've had 10 years or 11 years now of just falling off a cliff. And Tiff Macklin spoke at the Empire Club a couple days ago, saying it's bad for Canada. We could see like 1 to 2% growth. If we don't get a CUSMA deal, it could be catastrophic. It could be a nightmare here in Canada.
Catastrophic. And I've said this from the get-go. All economists have said this. Doug Porter was out, at the beginning of last year saying, if we do not get a deal with the US, our economy is going to absolutely collapse. So CUSMA is not a negotiable. CUSMA must be renewed in some way, shape, or form. And if it is not, we are in for some dire straits on our economy. This is not just about tariffs. This is absolutely about how we trade and the largest trade partner that we have.
And all we get from Francois Philippe Champagne is, my mother said, we're going to be all right. But like, I don't know what Francois has been into, that David Eby's decriminalization cupboard or something, but we're not going to be all right. We need serious people in Ottawa. We need absolutely serious people.
Yeah, we definitely do. And, I think that, when you look at the last 10 years, it's a lot about virtue signaling. It's a lot about ideology. A lot of the laws were pushed onto that aspect. And I think the BC Business Council, under the guidance of David Williamson and Ken Peacock, did an excellent job at showing what that virtue signaling and what that ideology actually costs our economy. Never before has it been done. We haven't seen it. We haven't seen it done for Canada. In fact, there's been a lot of arguing about it, but nothing that's actually been concrete in the way that they did it for BC and what the Clean BC program was going to cost our economy. But the premise is the same. You layer on top of our economy all of the different taxes, levies, and bureaucracy, regulations, and it will absolutely cripple us economically. It's no wonder to me that we see our middle class shrinking. We came out of COVID with a K recovery where the big got bigger and the small are dying on the vine, and largely self-inflicted. This is self-inflicted legislation. This is self-inflicted policy that is done by our federal and our provincial governments. And the only two provinces that are not subjected to that would be Alberta and Saskatchewan, where they have premiers that are literally going, above and beyond to try and stimulate their economies in very real and meaningful ways.
Weakness of leadership. We've highlighted that many times. Weakness of leadership over the past 11 years has brought this great nation with its resource, like any nation in the world would be just chomping at the bit to have, one, the resources that are beneath our feet, two, the proximity to the world's largest economy, three, the protection. We get all this free health care and all this stuff because we haven't been spending on our own military, because we rely on the American military. All these pluses are never talked about on the CBC. All they do is push TDS narrative, ICE narrative, all these things. People need to shut them out, amplify voices like yourself and myself, and get those voices out there. They are the ones spreading misinformation, disinformation. They are the ones trying to keep the access to the taxpayer cupboard open, because they're the ones wallowing in it and just gorging themselves. The CBC, look at their budget now, like close to $2 billion, or what else they take, at 1.6 from the taxpayer, and another 400 million that they, I guess, managed to get themselves. They need to live off the 400 million. Whatever you can kill, you can eat, CBC.
Yeah. Well, and it goes farther than that. Yes, it's about the CBC, but CBC is fueling fear. And the one thing about Canadians is that, in COVID, we became very fearful. And I think politicians realized that fear was an excellent motivator. And with that motivation, they have continued to really pull that lever. When, I can almost call the elections by how much the politicians start to draw upon fear of its people. And Canadians need to be proud of our oil and gas sector, and proud of our mining sector, and proud of who we are as a country. And you're right, we need to be an energy giant, and we should be an energy superstar on the global stage. And instead, we have cowered and allowed other countries to dictate to us. And Carney's doing the same. He's allowing the EU to dictate to us what our policies should be. this is ridiculous, and we need right now in this moment, a prime minister and premiers who will fire on all cylinders, named energy. And energy is everything, and cheap energy is prosperity for its people.
And you need to find politicians that speak in plain English. Again, go listen to that video that we did with Mark Carney's speech and the speech from Marco Rubio. Completely different language. A grade sixer can understand what Marco Rubio said, and I have no idea who can understand what Mark Carney said, other than the globalists there. He spoke straight to the globalists and used words that even this hour has 22 minutes, has poked fun at it and saying all the words that are used in there, that pretending that they all know what those words mean. And I
Yeah.
guess if you just love to virtue signal, you're just like, oh, I agree with all those words, even though you don't even know what he said.
And Marco Rubio's speech was actually written by Ronald Reagan's speechwriter. And when you listen to what he said and how he said it, it's got a very Ronald Reagan, sound to it. But whether it's Ronald Reagan or whether it is Obama, both of them have a very natural cadence and have a very plain speak way of communicating. It's beautiful, it's compelling, it's inspirational, it's clear, it's provocative, and I thought they were both. I thought that Marco Rubio's was an excellent, excellent speech, and for me, it was far more compelling and far more clear and understandable than what Carney's was.
You were an MLA. If you decided to run again, I know that you didn't run in the latest election. You decided not to run. Do you think you're very popular? Do you think if you would have ran as a Green Party member, based on Renee Merrifield alone, you would get elected in Kelowna Mission?
No, I don't.
No,
I
it's because
don't.
people vote for the sign, right? I mean, when I talk about Matt Jean there,
Yeah.
like, I mean, he's not going to win running as a Liberal in that riding.
And I literally did the work when you asked me that. I did the work of thinking to myself all of the door knocking that I did, and all the people that I talked to, and whether or not I could have had a green mandate resonate with those individuals. And it was like there's not like I couldn't even think through and think, would I get enough votes? You can't. There. That particular riding has a lot of individuals that are employed with large manufacturing operations, or our business owners or small business owners, are people that work at the fire halls or work as nurses. And so what resonated with them was a strong mandate for healthcare, or a strong mandate for business, a strong mandate for Greens. Don't have any of that. In fact, I'd have to tell them, yeah, you're right. The clean BC policy, it would actually be our undoing economically. So you're totally right. Would Matt win if he was under a Liberal banner? Probably not. Knowing the Edmonton Riverbend area, knowing who lives there, it's going to be a lot of small business owners, a lot of oil and gas, a lot of individuals that are employed by non-government agencies. Could he win as a Liberal? I don't see it happening. I just don't.
Sam Cooper, I mean, well, first of all, I'll say that Doug Ford went on CNN. I mean, they'd love to have Doug Ford on because he does TDS stuff really well. And so CNN loves to put him on there. The Wolf Blitzer had him on there, and, he's poking a stick in Trump's eye. And he talks about, like the Kuzma deal is so important. Yet Doug Ford has got to be one of the people that just loves to ramp up the fear in Ontario and the rest of the nation, and actually get the ire of the Americans up by doing these stupid bits on CNN. But Sam Cooper put out a piece there saying that this past year's political messaging on as far as people being performative to get personal political power, it's Carney, Eby, and Ford. I mean, without a doubt.
And you know what? I love that you put this up because this is brilliant. He says to maintain personal political power. So whether it's the Liberal prime minister in Carney, or whether this is a conservative-ish, premier in Ford, or whether this is an NDP in Eby, it doesn't really matter what your political stripes are. They are all using the same issues
Yeah.
for their own personal political power, which is, you know what? I want to poke the bear. I want to piss off Trump because then Trump will do something bad and I can tell everyone to be afraid of Trump and that I need to stay in power. This is like performative politics at its worst, and it's really disgusting because it's not truly motivated by what is in the best interest of the people. It's what is in my best interest as a politician. And nothing disgusts me more than having a politician who gives all politicians a bad name because they are simply using it for their own gain.
It is exploitation of the voter, and it is basically um, just using and abusing the voter with fear. And Trudeau said it in that piece we played it a while ago. We use fear because it works, and it's like their magic potion. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the Americans. And in fact, I watched the hockey game. I'm sure you watched the hockey game, the Canada-U.S. hockey game, and it was a great game. It was an absolutely great game. We didn't get the result that we wanted for sure, but you know what? I couldn't help but say, for the love of the game, that was a great hockey game, and the excitement of that Jack Hughes kid. I mean, like holy cow! I mean, that kid, he's a storybook hockey player. Whether he's an American or a Canadian, that kid got his teeth knocked out. That's respect, man. He got his teeth knocked out and he scores the game winner. Like, I mean, and then people were whining that the goalie, if it wasn't for the goalie, well, the goalie's in every game. I coached for 10 years. I coached against goalies and we lost. And I'm just like, man, you go and shake the goalie's hand and you say, like, I mean, you stole that game. That's the goalie's on the ice too, right? It's part of the game. But we shouldn't
Totally.
take away from that win. That was like an amazing win by the Americans and a very emotional win. And it shouldn't be about politics. It should be about just for the love of hockey. And what a great game. And, I would be the first one to go up there and shake Jack Hughes' hand. And I can remember doing it as a coach. And I can remember my daughter played very well. And they would come up to her and says, you won that tournament almost by yourself. And, they was respect. It wasn't anger, right?
No. And I mean, good grief. We had, our player who won, for the most goals scored and the most assists in the entire tournament. So I'm blanking on his name right now, but great game, absolutely amazing. And props to the American team who had their teammates, pass away and brought his kids
And
out on the
Gaudreau, yeah,
ice.
yeah, yeah, Gaudreau, yeah. I mean, that was emotional in itself, right? I mean,
Oh, it
Gaudreau,
was it
those
was
kids.
amazing. Just
Anybody
amazing. And it humanizes the whole thing, right? It actually says like, hey, look, this is what the sport is about. This is what people are about. Oh wait, these are all Americans. And nowhere has it been more relevant in that we were told not to go to the US. And so you have all these Canadians going to Mexico, and Puerto Vallarta has all sorts of issues with the cartel this last week. So you know what? It just yeah, the US is not our enemy. And, I tell people that gently at dinner parties when they get all, crazy about Trump. I just say, you know what? Trump, how did you feel about the Americans when Obama was in power? Like it's the same Americans. It's the same Americans. So just, don't judge them all by who their leader is right now.
I would say if you take it back to hockey, uh, Trump is their Dave Semenko. I mean, you don't like him if you're on the other team, but I mean, God, you like him if he's on your team, right? He's their enforcer, and we need that on our side. We need somebody that puts Canada first, not globalist interests. We need somebody that puts Canada first, and that's what we need here. And if I want to be an armchair coach here, I'm going to say, hey, coach, why'd you take McDavid off the ice? Like, really? Like, I mean, we know that the goal's going to get scored in a couple minutes. Leave the guy on the ice, best player in the game. Just don't take him off the ice.
Yeah,
Yikes.
totally. Yeah, definitely.
Anyway.
Most definitely.
Um, and then Sam Cooper, again, a great piece here. We talked about this before. Experts warn Canada is China's prototype for democratic infiltration. 5 times the amount of per capita penetration of the United States in Canada. And we've seen it here with Mark Carney. They asked him, why does it seem like China wants you to win? I don't know.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
my Yeah, my uncle was an MP for 16 years, and this is dating back a long time ago. And even back then, he was talking about issues like food security, access to minerals, access to oil and gas. And he was talking about how the Chinese are using very legal aspects and legal means to come into Canada and to buy up land and to buy up businesses and to buy up oil and gas companies and to buy up mining mines. And they are using legal means to infiltrate our democratic system as well. I love Sam Cooper. I'm a big fan. That I love his exposés and the way he digs. Is he always right? No, not 100%, but he definitely is doing the work to actually figure things out. This is a huge watch out. And this is what Trump was so upset about right at the beginning, and so upset about, how China had actually infiltrated Canada and was at their border. And, this is not rocket science. This is something we need to pay attention to. But instead of actually figuring this out and paying attention to it, we've got our prime minister that is out there actually trying to, invite them in greater measure. And some people might say, hey, look, Renee, it's just, 49,000 EVs. It's not 49,000 EVs. It is all the data that those EVs collect on a daily basis. It is also the media access that China gets. It is the security access that they are guaranteed. These are scary, scary, scary things. And we need to pay attention and sound the alarm bell, guys. They're not doing anything illegal, so we can't actually punish them for doing it. But we need to make sure that we change our laws, and that our government officials and elected officials are not the ones rolling the red carpet out.
And it's more than 49,000 EVs now. They're already talking about Chinese manufacturing here in Canada. I mean, if you're an auto worker in Ontario, you got to be questioning what the leadership is doing to your future. You really got to question that. We got to move on, though. We got a couple more things we want to hit on. And one of them is it's the 4th year anniversary of the invasion of the Russians of Ukraine. 4 years now. And I'm going to have Dennis Storchuk in at 1:30. And he's brought in an interview with a young man that's heading off to war, a young man here that's leaving Canada and going to go join the military there in Ukraine. It's just a meat grinder for these people. But Carney yesterday announced another $2 billion. This is in addition to the $2.5 billion that was announced just around Christmas time. Remember when the Chrystia Freeland thing was going on? He announced another $2.5 billion. So I think our total is now around $25 billion that is going towards Ukraine. And Canada brags, Mark Carney brags that we're the largest per capita contributor to this effort. We can't afford to do this anymore. We can't afford it. We've underfunded our military, under-equipped it, undermanned it, and we continue to dole out more money. We are not in any position to be continuing to dole out money while Canadians suffer in long lines at food banks. We are no longer in that position. And no oversight, too. No oversight on all this money. And Chrystia Freeland is going there to manage it. The what you call the storied economic advisor in Canada. 11 years, and this is where we're at.
And honestly, you and I talked about this when we were doing our predictions for 2026. I said the war is not gonna stop because there's too many people making too much money off of it, and there's too many bad actors that are actually profiting from this war. And the arm's length UN has already gone in and said 38% of every dollar that is going into Ukraine is being siphoned off fraudulently. That is a huge number, and Canadians do not have extra cash. And this is not the time that we should be giving away money. And this is definitely not the time we should be giving away money to a country that doesn't it doesn't have proper channels to actually receive or utilize this money in a way that is meaningful. So I don't want 38 cents of every dollar going to someone's bank account that lives somewhere else. And I think that this is a really, really poor choice on behalf of Carney and behalf of the Canadian people.
I just want to stop sending young people into a meat grinder for something that seems to be profiting too many people with no oversight over the money that's being spent. And this seems to be just an ongoing war that could have been stopped a few times. And shameful that all these young men, and like I said, I'm going to have an interview here, and I've interviewed people from Kiev in the past as well. And shameful. Check out this chart. You can probably lend some knowledge to this chart. If we could put that Canada's housing downturn among the deepest in major economies. That's Canada and China. Whoop, where'd you go? It was there for a second.
No, it was up. Okay, it was a quick
There.
one.
So, I mean, this is in some of the markets in Canada. We've seen such a drop in the, Toronto and Vancouver markets.
Yeah,
And
those are the major markets, and definitely seeing those deep blues. This is what was intended. The government definitely wanted to slow the housing market down, and this is definitely one of the ways that they were intending to do so. The scariest part for me is that this is largely in housing starts and not necessarily just housing sales, and not housing pricing. We're still seeing buoyancy in housing pricing, and this is a really specific issue that happens in different areas. So yes, Toronto is badly hit, Vancouver is badly hit, but Kelowna has not seen the same downturn in pricing, uh, nor has the prairies, or other areas of Canada. What we are seeing though is the housing starts declining, and the housing starts, that's a bad thing, because then what we're going to have is when the market does return, and when people do decide to buy, we're going to see that actually prop up housing prices all over again, and that's going to further drive those new purchasers out of the market, simply because it's high priced. So, is Carney's plan working? No, it's not. This is more of a story of economic slowdown than it is a story of actual solutions for the housing market.
a lot of this caused, and like this is this pre-construction stuff. A lot of this caused by the huge influx of immigration, and then a lot of these condos that went up in Vancouver as basically as rental units. People would buy them and buy them 2 3 years out, and then the market completely changed. They cut back on the immigration, and then the interest rates went through the roof, and a lot of these condos now are underwater, and a lot of the people that are being forced to buy them are way lower than what they're worth, and they're going to lose their deposits, and they think that's it. They walk away with, just like not paying, not getting their deposit back. But it gets worse, because then the developer can then sue them for the difference of what they actually sell it for, because they're obligated to finish the purchase.
Yeah, they are obligated to finish the purchase. They also have to, the developer has to sell it.
Yeah.
So, before you can claim damages, you have to know what those damages are. So it's a very difficult situation. And
Would
I,
put a
you know,
bad
what,
taste, yeah, or pre-construction, like when it finally comes back around. Because like this was a booming pre-construction market, Canada, right? Like, I mean, we saw it here in Kelowna, where they were selling developments out in a day. Like, you were in rush, you were actually panicking to get in there and begging. You were trying to pull favors to get in on the line.
yeah, and now we are in the exact opposite. I mean, pre-sales are dead. There's not a project that, or hardly a project that would be able to achieve those pre-sales. And so you're not seeing cranes go up. You're not seeing projects start. In Kelowna, there's about 7,000 under building permit, and only 2,000 started. Why? Because they're not moving forward. They can't. Those building permits expire in 6 months. You're not going to see them renew, and we'll be in the same situation with not enough housing if and when our economy actually returns.
And it could get worse, because Equifax is now reporting that that mortgage delinquencies are on the rise, and data showed that mortgage delinquencies now jumped 30% year over year in the fourth quarter across Canada, and rising as much as 54% in Ontario. And there's another 1.2 million mortgages expected to renew at higher rates this year, and half of Canadians are now $200 away from meeting their monthly obligations. So those are not good numbers if they all converge on top of each other.
Yeah, they're not good numbers, and they're not the housing market. That's more of an economic story. Those are people that don't have the amount of money they need to live, the amount of money they need to survive, or the amount of money they need to pay their mortgage every month. So this is a huge mortgage story, or sorry, economic story that is being seen with a symptom in the mortgage bankruptcies or defaults.
Well, that's our show. It's an hour and 4 minutes, I guess. It's about an hour, I guess, where we've been on here. And Again, always a great show with Renee Merrifield, and we do this once a week, Beyond the Ballot. And if you could like, share, subscribe, get this out there, the best political commentary show on the internet by far. And if you could help us get it out there more, we're seeing tremendous subscriber growth, and we're seeing tremendous views in that. So we'd love to continue that growth, but you can help that by sharing this message far and wide.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jim, for having me, and thanks so much for all those that watch.
Thank you for watching Now Media.